What's going on, everyone? Let me tell you about something that absolutely exploded on NBA Today this afternoon that has the entire Knicks community experiencing that type of collective validation that only comes when everyone who criticized you has to admit they were completely wrong. I'm talking about the kind of narrative shift that happens so rarely in professional basketball that when it actually occurs, you have to stop and fully appreciate it. The type of shift where a player goes from being considered the weakest link on your roster to being discussed as potentially your most important X factor in the space of less than one season. This isn't just about Mikal Bridges playing great defense or OG Anunoby progressing in his rehabilitation. This is about witnessing one of the most complete narrative transformations in recent NBA history, where the Knicks went from being criticized for giving up 5 first-round picks for Bridges to that same group of critics now saying it was an absolute steal. So buckle up, because what I'm about to share from today's NBA Today broadcast isn't just about one player finding his form. This is about roster construction and patience, about letting players adapt to new systems, about how media narratives can be completely wrong, and about whether the Knicks should be looking to add another playmaker like Colin Sexton from the Charlotte Hornets to further strengthen their second unit. Knicks fans, we're building something special here. Real analysis for real fans. That like button is your vote of confidence. One click helps another Knicks fan find this community. If you appreciate this content, hit that like right now. When Knicks fans move together, nothing can stop us. All right. Here's the situation that had the entire NBA Today panel absolutely fascinated this afternoon. And I'm talking about veteran basketball analysts who've covered the NBA for decades, but still found themselves genuinely surprised by how dramatically the narrative around Mikal Bridges has changed in such a short time. The main story that emerged wasn't just that Bridges is having the best defensive season of his entire career, although that obviously got discussed extensively with statistics and video clips. It was about the complete shift in how fans, media, and analysts view the trade that brought Bridges to New York. The NBA Today analysts were going through how just a year ago, Bridges was benched in a closeout game against the Charlotte Hornets after the Knicks gave up 5 first-round picks for him, how fans were in absolute panic, wondering if the front office had ruined the franchise's future, how all the media outlets were calling it a massive overpay for a player who had never been an all-star. Let me start by giving you the full context that NBA Today was establishing at the beginning of the broadcast, because understanding both where Bridges was a year ago and where he is now is absolutely essential for grasping the magnitude of this narrative shift. Bridges' first season with the Knicks was rough. We're talking about a player who struggled offensively, who wasn't providing the same level of elite defense he showed in Phoenix, who seemed to be pressing too hard trying to justify all that draft capital that was spent to acquire him. The NBA Today panel was discussing how Bridges was even benched in favor of Deuce McBride in that infamous game against Charlotte, how that was perhaps the lowest point of his first year with the Knicks, when everyone was questioning whether this trade would be remembered as one of the worst in franchise history. But here's what really has the NBA Today analysts engaged about Bridges' transformation this season. And this is where you see how dramatically different his numbers and impact are compared to last year. Bridges is averaging 16 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, while shooting 53% from the field and 41% from three, including a ridiculous 49% on corner threes. The panel was showing charts comparing these numbers to his first year, when he shot only 35% from three with the Knicks, discussing how yes, some of those numbers were skewed by end-of-quarter heaves he took, but the contrast in efficiency is still massive. The analysts were emphasizing how Bridges isn't just shooting better, he's taking better shots within the flow of the offense. He's more comfortable in Mike Brown's system. He's playing with more confidence. The show dove deep into the defensive side, where Bridges has really been spectacular this season, and here's where you really see why he should be in Defensive Player of the Year conversation. The NBA Today analysts were showing basketball index statistics, showing how Bridges' defensive playmaking is as high as it's ever been. How he's in that upper echelon group of best defenders in basketball after those numbers dropped with the Nets and early with the Knicks. The panel was breaking down how Bridges is averaging 2 steals and 1 block per game this season, being the only player in the entire NBA hitting those numbers in both categories. His stocks, steals plus blocks combined, have been ridiculous in recent games with multiple 3, 4, and 5 stock performances terrorizing opposing offenses. What the NBA Today crew kept emphasizing, and I think this is absolutely critical for understanding why Bridges' transformation is so impressive, is how he's returned to being that elite defender he was in Phoenix. The analysts were reminding everyone that Bridges earned his defensive stripes in the league with his persistent defense against elite league guards like Chris Paul and Damian Lillard during his time with the Suns, how he was often given the point of attack assignment and was his team's literal first line of defense. The NBA Today panel was discussing how in his first year with the Knicks, he was chasing ball handlers and shooters around the court for 37 minutes per game, while also having a 19% usage rate on offense, which likely contributed to his fatigue and diminished numbers. The panel spent extensive time analyzing how Mike Brown has adjusted how he uses Bridges this season to maximize his effectiveness, and this sparked really interesting discussions about player management and system building. The analysts were explaining how Brown continues to give Bridges point-of-attack assignments, but that's allowed for more flexibility within that framework, where Bridges often finds himself in a free safety-type role when appropriate, relieving him from constantly chasing the ball. The NBA Today panel was pointing out how Deuce McBride, who recently entered the starting lineup amid several injuries, has taken some of those duties himself, allowing Bridges to conserve energy and be more effective when he is defending. This is smart coaching that recognizes you can't ask a player to be your best perimeter defender and your third or fourth offensive option while playing 37 minutes per night without his effectiveness eventually suffering. What I found particularly fascinating during today's NBA Today discussion was when they started showing fan reactions and social media quotes that perfectly capture how dramatic this narrative shift has been. The analysts were reading tweets from Knicks fans saying things like, "Mikal Bridges saved the Knicks season," when a year ago that same group of fans were saying he was ruining everything, quoting Nets fans admitting, "All the draft picks we got will be 27th or worse. Mikal, you are our owner," after they spent months mocking the trade when Bridges was struggling. The NBA Today panel was discussing how this is one of the fastest and most complete narrative shifts they've seen, where literally the same player who was vilified 12 months ago is now being discussed as possibly an all-star candidate and definitely a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. The show also explored why Bridges still isn't getting the national recognition he deserves despite these incredible numbers, and this is where the conversation got really interesting. The NBA Today analysts were going through current Defensive Player of the Year odds, showing how Chet Holmgren is the favorite at plus 130, followed by Victor Wembanyama, Evan Mobley, Amen Thompson, Bam Adebayo, Dyson Daniels, and others. But Bridges isn't even on the list, despite being the only player averaging 2 steals and 1 block. The panel was debating whether this is because he plays in New York, where expectations are so high that excellence is taken for granted, or if voters simply haven't updated their perceptions of who Bridges is as a defensive player after watching him struggle last year. The coverage also dove into the health update on OG Anunoby and how his eventual return, alongside Bridges' current elite form, could create the best perimeter defensive duo in the NBA. And honestly, this was one of the most exciting parts of the segment. Ian Begley reported that Anunoby is doing controlled on-court work and scrimmaging 3-on-3, that he's been cleared to take contact even if it's in a controlled 3-on-3 setting, and that there are levels to contact in these scrimmages, where one of the last hurdles is often full contact in 5-on-5 scrimmages. The NBA Today analysts were discussing how Anunoby was having an incredible year himself before getting injured, averaging around 18 points per game with great defense, and how having both Anunoby and Bridges playing at this defensive level is going to make life miserable for opposing offenses. What really struck me during the NBA Today analysis was when they started connecting all of this to the Knicks' roster-building need and whether they should be looking to add another playmaker off the bench. And this is where the Collin Sexton speculation enters the conversation. The analysts were pointing out how the Knicks have elite defense and star scoring from Jalen Brunson, but sometimes struggle with second-unit playmaking when Brunson is off the court. The NBA Today panel was discussing how Sexton, who now plays for Charlotte after being traded from Utah, could be exactly the type of efficient scorer and secondary creator they need coming off the bench. The show explored what would make Sexton an attractive target, despite not being the type of player you'd typically associate with a defense-oriented Knicks team. And this sparked interesting debates about balancing strength and weaknesses. The NBA Today analysts were breaking down how Sexton is on a 4-year, $72 million contract that works out to approximately $18 million per year, which is reasonable value for his production and would fit into the Knicks' salary structure. The panel was discussing how Sexton provides immediate scoring punch, especially on drives, how although he's more of a shooting guard than a traditional point guard, he has some ability to create for others, how his three-point shooting percentage and overall efficiency would complement the team's style of play. What the NBA Today crew kept emphasizing about the Sexton idea was that his defense being a weak point could potentially be hidden within the Knicks' strong defensive structure under Mike Brown. The analysts were making the argument that when you have elite defenders like Bridges and Anunoby on the perimeter, when you have Mitchell Robinson protecting the rim, when you have Josh Hart providing defensive energy, you can afford to have one offense-first guy in your rotation if his scoring is valuable enough. The panel was debating whether Sexton actually fits what the Knicks are trying to do, or if they'd be better off pursuing another two-way wing to add even more defensive versatility. Listen, after watching the entire NBA Today segment this afternoon about Mikal Bridges' complete transformation and the narrative shift around him and the Collin Sexton speculation, I'm absolutely vindicated for defending the Bridges trade from the beginning, despite all the skepticism. This is exactly the type of player I thought the Knicks were getting. An elite, versatile defender who can shoot threes and make smart basketball plays. And the fact that it took him one season to adapt to a new team and system doesn't mean the trade was bad. As for Sexton, I'm a bit torn because the Knicks clearly need more bench playmaking, but I also value their defensive identity so much that I worry about adding a player who's primarily a scorer. If they can get Sexton for reasonable assets